Hi, welcome to another tutorial on Unity Playmaker series. Today we're gonna look at something different than the videos I made. Today we're gonna look at a teleportation system which we will make using a first-person controller from scratch. So that is basically what we're gonna do, and I have a simple scene setup and the main camera. Actually, I'll also be explaining the basics of Unity. I mean the elements within Unity game engine. So as you can see, this is the main camera. We have the inspector panel right here, which has few things right here. So every game object inside the scene has a transform, and transform is basically position, rotation, and scale inside the world, game world. So as you can see, the main camera is right here and the directional right is here. So we'll understand the elements of the camera first. So we have this camera panel right here, and the first thing we see is clear flags. And clear flags is basically what we see, what the background is actually going to be inside the game. So if we want a solid color, then we can choose a solid color to be simple. And if it is going to be a 3D first person shooter, I guess, then it's going to be a skybox, and you can add a skybox inside the camera by typing add component and skybox. Then you can load the skybox from here. So basically this is not required as it is the preloaded default skybox which we are seeing right here. And this is the background color, and this is useful only when we set this to solid color. So we can actually choose between which color background we want for our game. So I'll leave this to skybox for right now. And culling mask is basically what filters we want to be applied to the main camera. Suppose I'll create a 3D game object which is a cube, and I'll bring it out. So as you can see, this is in front of the camera. I'll bring it a little lower. Okay, now we can see what exactly the cube looks like. Now if I set the layer to, I'll add a layer named invisible, and I'll set the layer of the cube to invisible, and I'll select the main camera and go to culling mask. I'll deselect this so we cannot see what exactly is invisible. So that's how a layer mask, culling mask works. It can be filtered with different things. So as I set the layer of the cube to invisible, we cannot see if we use and deselect this one. We can see that it is mixed. So I'll go back to everything and I'll set the cube to default layer. Now we're gonna look at projection. Projection is basically 2D and 3D view of the camera, and we have a field of view which actually tells us how much distance we can see in a simple view. So I'll show this with reference to a game. Suppose say you're creating a sniper game. I'll just delete the cube and add another cube. So as we can see, we have three axes, and this is the z-axis, this is the x-axis, and this is the y-axis. So I'll put this way far ahead, and something like 500, I guess. Now it is way far ahead and we cannot see the cube. Now if I adjust this to 0.01, then we can see the cube, which is 500 units away from the camera. So that's how basically a field of view works. I mean, we can use a scope for a sniper rifle, or we can use it in different ways. Suppose if you wanted to see the whole scene, you can see the cube right here being very small. So the normal is 60 and the cube is right in front of us. So that's how it works for the camera. And the clipping planes is basically the distance from which the vision starts from the camera. So if I increase this, you can see if I'll bring the scheme view down, and I'll say the vision is from here and we cannot see the cube. So that basically is the use of clipping planes. So, and the far option right here controls how distant does the camera see. So if we put this to 10, then it will see only until here. The objects beyond that will not be seen. So if I duplicate this and bring it here, and if I keep this up, you cannot see this until I bring it into the range. There we go. So that's basically clipping planes, which decides the distance, what exactly the main camera sees. So I'll delete the cubes and we're gonna look at view portrait. That is basically a camera. I'll explain it with another camera. I'll bring in another camera and I'll set the main camera's width, height to 0.5, and in this camera I'll say solid color. Okay, I'll explain depth later, but for now this is what exactly we want. So as we can see, the main camera is exactly 1/4 of the total view, and if I set this to 0.5 and 1, then we can see a traditional split screen camera view, and this is mostly for multiplayer games, offline co-op and stuff like that. So basically we can even turn this to 0.1, 0.2, 0.2, then we can actually make this a kind of a map for the player to identify where exactly he is. So let's set this to 1 and 1. Now we're gonna look at depth. Depth is basically layers of camera. Suppose we have two cameras right here and the depth is set to 0 in both of them. If I bring in this forward, then it is going to be depth 1, and if I bring this more forward, then this camera will snap up. So that's how basically depth works. So I'll delete this camera, we have no need of it, and target texture right here is a kind of, actually I'll show you. We have our camera right here. I'll create a cylinder. I'll put the rotation to 90 and I'll bring it so that's way too far away. I'll bring it closer. -5 should do. So we have a cylinder right here. Now what exactly we are going to do is I'll create a sphere and I'll scale it down so that it works as a offset from the cylinder. And now I'll add a camera at this end of the cylinder and I'll put it to -90, I guess, and the clipping planes to 0.1 so we can see how far is the object. And this is basically something like a sniper scope. I'll go to the assets folder. This is basically our file explorer inside Unity. So I'll create a folder. I'll set textures and I'll create a new render texture and I'll name it scope. So now I'll go to camera, which is the scope camera, and I'll say I'll drag in this texture to the camera and I'll apply the same scope texture to this, and now we can see the camera which is being projected on the other end. So now if I create a cube and bring it here so that we cannot see from the main camera but only through this scope right here. That's what exactly render textures do. And if you want to make a mirror, then we can say 90 degrees and we can put this to -180, I guess. So we have a basic mirror right in front of us. And if I add a cube, we can see that it acts as a basic mirror. So that's what exactly render textures do. I'll delete this texture, it was just for reference. And the remaining are just not of much use. So basically that's the main camera inside Unity.